Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mary Coakley. As are you talking over me, Betty? As many people know. But for those of you who haven't been here before, you're very welcome. It's great to see so many friendly faces back again. This is the third year, I can't believe it, that we're running this series. And really, Talk with Trinity, what it's about bringing the staff and academics from Trinity who have a wealth of knowledge and experience to share and to bring it to the community. But it's also about us listening to and learning from you. I don't think it's not a one-way dialogue, because from my experience and hopefully yours of the last few series, we've learned more from the brilliant questions you all ask. Questions I don't think that necessarily students might ask of their lecturers, maybe for a variety of different reasons. But so I'd encourage you to ask. We have time at the end for questions, so please do engage as much as you like. And this is the first of a 4-week series. You'll see the programme on the sheet there, so do come back again. I know some of the topics you might be thinking, well, I'm not really into artificial intelligence. But actually, again, it's about the speaker and it's about how they impart it. And, because we've had great speakers, they could be talking about flies walking up the wall, and it's interesting because they're interested in it, and then we become interested. At least that's what I think, anyway. So thank you to everyone for coming, and most of all, thank you to Professor Ian Robertson, who's come along to join us today and given of his busy schedule. He is Professor of Psychology at Trinity and Co-Director of the Global Brain Health Institute. And I think many of you will be familiar from him on radio and TV. He's published more than 200 books and articles and contributed a lot to public communication and understanding of science. So we're delighted to have him, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you. Well, it's great to be here and great to have the community here. I often walk up from Grand Canal Dock up to and realize that you can feel there's a good community in this area. Somehow you can sense it. So it's lovely to have you here. Privileged to talk to you. So brain health. How many of you are aware of the need to take exercise to keep physically healthy? Yeah. How many of you are aware of the need to do stuff to keep your brain healthy? Good. Well, that's great, because you're absolutely right. A recent paper in The Lancet said about 40% of cases of Alzheimer's disease are theoretically caused by factors that maybe you could have some control over. So for example, if you have hearing loss but haven't had that corrected by hearing aid, that reduces the amount of stimulation your brain is getting. And, your brain needs stimulation, needs engagement in order to build, if you like, a kind of brain muscle power that allows it to cope with injury or disease, okay? So disease isn't a kind of one-way street. Just as if you break your leg and you're fit, you're physically fit, you'll get a better recovery. Whereas if you break your leg and you're not physically fit, it'll take you much longer. So with your brain, if you're brain fit, then you will cope much better if some of the injury happens or some of the disease processes start in your brain. So it's incumbent on all of us, and not just at the kind of age that most of us are in this room, and most of us, but also in middle age, what you do in middle age. So tell your sons and your daughters this, what you do in middle age seems to be incredibly important about the nature of the fitness of your brain at our age. So, and I want to talk now about something that's superficially not related to brain health, but actually it's hugely related to it. And it's particularly related to it when you come to older age, because there's a lot of prejudices about older age, aren't there? There's a lot of, people sometimes patronize you. Sometimes people talk down to you. There's assumptions about your memory or about your cognitive functioning. And the problem is, if you internalize these, if you take these on board, they can be self-fulfilling prophecies. So for example, if you study in America, Dan, where you got people of our age to have them sent for memory testing, if someone wants to test my memory, the anxiety that caused all of us to be someone sending me for memory testing. So they were sent to memory testing to a university, like one of these modern buildings up in Trinity, and there was all these mainly young people around, and this young white-coated research assistant comes up to test your memory. Compared with, you come down here in this place, and there's someone of your age saying, I want to just give you a little exercise for memory, okay? It's the same test. It's the same test. On average, your memory here will be much better than your memory up in the white-coated youth environment because of the prejudice, the stereotypes that makes you anxious when you feel you're being tested for something that you're supposed to be poor at. And many of you in this room are super-agers. That is, your memory is good, your cognitive performance is good, but sometimes you underperform. Sorry about this. I had it on silent mode, I swear to you. I forgot. I was once in Pat Kenny in the morning on the radio to talk about the 5 secrets of a successful memory. Unfortunately, I could only remember 4 of them. It was very embarrassing. So anyway, that's why this thing, confidence, is so important. Confidence in yourself. And that's what Samuel Johnson, the great literary scholar, said. Self-confidence, first, anything you want to do in life, self-confidence is critical. It's critical for children, but it's critical in particular for people of our age. And the great example of self-confidence was President J.F. Kennedy, when he said in 1961, we'll put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, which was a ridiculous thing to say because the rockets, the computers, and the materials didn't exist. But because he projected this great goal, this great aspiration, he galvanized an entire nation, and they delivered on that goal. That goal would not have been attained had he not been confident. Now, that doesn't mean being certain. He could not be certain that the computers, rockets, and materials would be made. So confidence is never 100% certain. If you're 100% certain you can do something, you don't need confidence. Confidence is a bridge across uncertainty. And of course, uncertainty makes you anxious. So confidence is a bridge across anxiety as well. And there's 4, the bridge to the future, which confidence helps you cross, has 2 strands to it. One called can do, that is, I think I can do that thing. I think I can run that 10K or walk that 10K. And it can happen. I think if I do train for that, I'm going to be fitter and more healthy afterwards. That gives you 4 states of the brain. Can't do, can't happen. That's apathy. You don't believe you can do something, and anyway, even if you did it, you don't believe the good thing's going to happen. And then you get top right, can do, can't happen. I could get a college degree, but you know what? From where I come from, I don't think it'll make any difference. Okay? That makes you angry. Then there's the opposite, can't do, can happen. Oh, I'd love to stop smoking. I know that if I did, I'm going to live longer and be healthier, but I just can't do it. That makes you anxious. And then you've got this amazing confidence square. I think I can do that, and if I do it, a good thing's going to happen. I think I can get that college degree, and if I do, I think I can get a better job. Okay? Now, that's the 4 states of the brain. This is apathy, and you can actually see apathy in the brain using brain imaging, using something called positron emission tomography. And there's low levels of a chemical messenger in the brain called dopamine that you'll all have heard of. Dopamine is what cocaine increases. And when you increase dopamine, people feel confident, all-powerful, happy. Not long-term, but short-term, okay? Norepinephrine or noradrenaline is a different chemical messenger. That's part of the fight-or-flight system. So when you feel very anxious or very angry, that beating heart, dry mouth, and tense stomach, that's all increased noradrenaline in your brain and increased what's called autonomic nervous system arousal. Now, and the thing is, that when you're frustrated because you think you can do something but it's not going to be a good benefit, that increases what's called the fight-or-flight system, okay? You'll have heard of the fight-or-flight system. But so does, this also activates the same system. So you get too much noradrenaline in your brain. And when you've got too much noradrenaline, it clouds your thinking. It makes it difficult to think your way through the problems and solve the problems. You get things out of proportion, okay? But here's the beautiful thing about confidence. If you believe you can do something, not with 100% certainty, remember, it bridges uncertainty and it bridges anxiety. If you believe you can do something and you say that to yourself, I can do this, even though there's a twist in your stomach and a doubt there, that's all part of the game. I can do this, and if I do this, I think that good thing will happen. Your brain treats that as if you've actually done it. And that gives you, your brain triggers a little, what's called a success experience, a little victory in your brain. And when you get that little victory, you get a mini, mini dose of cocaine. Dopamine, not cocaine, but dopamine, okay? And that, what does that do? It has 5 effects. It's a mini antidepressant. It lifts your mood. It's a mini anxiety drug. It makes you less anxious. It's a mini motivator. It makes you more likely to do stuff, to take that step. Fourthly, it makes you a little bit smarter, mentally sharper, because of the dopamine going to the front part of your brain. And finally, it makes other people listen to you. It makes you more persuasive. It lifts your status in their eyes. So this is an absolutely fundamental quality, confidence that all leaders need, all families need, all children need. It's the most powerful and potent state of the human mind. That's the reason we're all here with these amazing advances in civilization and us all living for more than twice as long as we did 100 years ago because of confidence. And that's part of brain health. Just going to say to you, you can actually visualize confident states of the brain from non-confident states of the brain. No, all I'm doing, don't try and understand this. I don't fully understand it myself. But the blue areas are when you've got less confidence, and the red areas are more confident. Confidence is visualizable in the brain. It's a potent state of the brain. And that's where the confidence was associated with critical areas of the brain to do with the reward, the feel-good, the victory parts of the brain, the success parts of the brain, the memory parts of the brain, and most of all, the action parts of the brain, doing stuff, okay? Whereas less confidence was more associated with negative emotion, uncertainty, and the middle and bottom parts of the frontal lobes that have to do with all the self-doubt and the self-thoughts and the self-reflections. It's going into yourself rather than outwards into action, which is what confidence does. And this is critical for brain health. Confidence is a huge source of brain health. Now, confidence affects most of the cells in your body, okay? Because when you're confident and when your mood is lifted and when your anxiety is lower, your immune system is boosted, okay? So it spreads through. The health of the brain is a huge determinant of the health of your body. And so if you can keep your brain healthy, keep engaged and motivated and active and taking action in the world and being confident in spite of uncertainty and anxiety, then your general health, every cell in your body, will benefit from it. Now, just a bit of data. This was the brilliant, I don't know if any of you take part in the Irish Longitudinal Study in Aging, TILDA. Is there anyone here in that? You go to St. James's Hospital for regular. So this is a study of about 9,000 Irish people. It's been going on for 15 years now, and Roseanne Kenny, brilliant geriatrician's running it. And they followed people up people starting in their 50s up to their 90s, and followed them up for years. And this is one of the studies from this. So one of the tests in this, the tilde, is a speed of walking test. How long it takes you to stand up from a chair, walk 3 meters, turn around, walk back, and sit down in the chair, okay? So it's the number of seconds it takes you to do that. And this is a very powerful predictor of general health. Okay? If you've got a broken leg or a bad hip, this doesn't count, okay? We're talking about setting aside these things. And then there's another test. How many, you're given 10 words to remember. Another test, how many words, how many animals can you think of, or how many words beginning with B, for instance. So what they did was they took 9,000 people, and most of these people were in their 50s because they wanted to follow them up in a lifetime. Most of the people were, so most people were not old as I am, okay? And they measured how fast they walked and their memory and their verbal fluency. And then they also measured what their perceptions of aging, their confidence about getting old, okay? Their confidence about getting old. And this was the kind of questions they asked them. I think you can ask yourself, don't shout it out, but just think, what would I answer? I think about getting older all the time. I have no control over the effects which getting older has on my social life. As I get older, I get wiser. That's a positive one. As I get older, there is much I can do to maintain my independence. That's a positive one. I get depressed when I think about getting older, okay? So these are, that's negative, okay? And that's positive, that's negative, and that's positive. So there's a whole lot of other questions. So you got basically a confidence about getting older score. Essentially, how negative your beliefs about what getting older involves, okay? How negative that was. So then they followed people up, now for much longer, but this was a study that was done 2 years later. They got them back in, and they measured how fast they walked, and they measured their memory, and they measured how many words they could generate, okay? And don't worry about the statistics here, but basically, the more, the number of, this is the number of animals you could name, okay? This was how well your frontal lobes could generate new ideas. The number of animals you could name was much higher if you had positive or you did not have negative perceptions of aging. Whereas if you endorsed these negative questions, that is, you were pessimistic about what aging involved, your mental agility declined more than if you had positive expectations, okay? So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's true of confidence. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and lack of confidence is also a self-fulfilling prophecy. So this is another one, not done here in Dublin, but done in the East Coast of America, where they measured how big the hippocampus was in the brain. Now, the hippocampus is where you lay down new memories. It's what allows you to remember who you met yesterday afternoon or what was on the news this morning. Okay, it stores your memory. And the bigger it is, generally, the better you can remember. But these are people with positive, who were confident about growing older. Okay, who had the positive expectations. Their hippocampus didn't decline much. And this is over a 10-year period. But the people who were pessimistic about aging, their hippocampus got smaller. Again, self-fulfilling prophecy. And then if we go to the walking, remember the walking test, the people with the negative expectations of aging slowed their walking significantly over that 2-year period. Now, this was nothing to do with their physical health, with whether they had a hip operation or not, whether they had arthritis. All of these things were controlled for. This was purely a mental attitude to aging, stripped of all other causes, appeared to cause a slowing of walking, a slowing of cognitive function, and a worsening of memory in a normal, healthy, mainly 50-year-olds over a 2-year period. That is remarkable. So that shows you brain health is all to play for, but critical to that is to be confident that you can do something about it, to be confident in your memory, to be confident in your mental functions, and to be confident in your ability to take action in the world, like being a part of this group. Now, here we have, I mentioned the cocaine and the dopamine. By the way, I've never had cocaine in my life. I just, to be quite frank, but studying the effects of it, they are remarkably like small effects of confidence. But anyway, this is the part of the brain that is the feel-good network. Whenever someone praises you, or you get a big present, or you achieve something, the good feeling you have is because of this kind of activity in a part of the brain called the ventral striatum, okay? This is increased dopamine activity visualized in a brain scanner in a human being. Now you'll see here that it tends to get less bright as you get older, okay? And sometimes people have assumed that's an inevitable part of aging. You become less motivated, you become less vigorous, if you like. And yes, there may be some part in that, but the thing is about this area here, that it's not entirely determined by your genetics or your age. And we know this, and just before I go on to that, just to say, again, don't worry about the details here, but this, if you give a group of people like us in this room a hard cognitive test called a working memory test, and you put us in a brain scanner like the MRI scanner up the road, and you look at the activity, you'll find, and compare us with a group of young people, you'll find big differences in these 4 areas of the brain. These are on the outer surface of the brain, the cortex, the grey matter. These are frontal and parietal areas. And people have assumed, oh, that's just evidence that our brains are shrinking, that this is age-related brain loss. However, a very talented group in Sweden, they did what no one had done before, and they did this kind of scan as well in the people to measure the dopamine levels in the brain's reward network. And when they took that out of the equation, these differences mostly disappeared. In other words, the differences in apparent cognitive function were much more related to this reward area, which is much more to do with motivation and with confidence, okay? So the thing is about this area, that you can do much more about that, about your motivation and your engagement, than you can about the thickness of your cortex, okay? So that gives us a potential to say, hold on a minute, maybe all of this cognitive decline, maybe, and the changes in our brain, maybe that's because of changes in what we do, changes in our mental attitude, changes in how we engage with the world, as much as it is due to inevitable physical changes caused by aging or illness. So now, I just want to give you the evidence that these differences are not necessarily just because of biological, genetic factors over which we've got no control. Because here we have exactly the same measure, that is how bright that reward area was, okay? In a group of people, this is in New York, but they got these are younger people of all ages, 30s, 40s, 50s, and they got them to do self-rate on what's called a status ladder. What is your social status? Where do you perceive yourself from 0 to 10? And 10 would be a kind of swaggering aristocrat, and 0 would be, bottom of the pit. So people ranked themselves in perceived social status. And what they found was, the higher your perceived social status, the brighter was this. And of course, the brighter this is, the smarter you are here, okay? So and that couldn't, it's not possible that these, your perceived social status, is hardly possible that this is caused by genetic or biological, medical factors. This is caused by your position vis-a-vis other people, how you perceive your position vis-a-vis other people. And that shapes, that causes fundamental changes in your brain chemistry that affect what you can do and what you believe you can do. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I mentioned at the beginning about, not letting the old man in, not letting the old woman in, okay? But there's other groups that have similar stereotypes that if they let them in, can be self-fulfilling prophecies. Racial stereotypes. Black people who are supposed to, they don't, but supposed to have a lower IQ. If they believe their IQ is being tested, they perform worse, just like the older people with the memory. Women, if they're given visuospatial tests at which they're supposed to be poorer, they're not. They perform worse if they think they're being tested on visuospatial because of the anxiety that's involved, okay? The anxiety interferes with their performance. We know about age, class, socioeconomic status. Socioeconomic status can be a source of feeling inferior. And I talk as a working class boy brought up in a council flat in Glasgow. I know what that feels like. I'm very lucky to now be a privileged member of a very privileged class, but when I started off, I know what it feels like to feel inferior. And that has negative effects on your performance. Physical appearance, including height, disability, all of these things, there are stereotypes associated with them that if you allow them into your mind, can undercut your ability to perform. And you can end up performing more poorly, not because of the disability or whatever it is you're supposed to be, but because of the anxiety that letting that category into your brain produces. So, protectors of confidence. So how we feel depends on what we pay attention to. So I'll give you a quick story about Padraig Harrington, the Irish golfer, the British Open 2007. He was in the lead at Carnoustie at the Open, a huge prize ahead of him, and he describes how he was just really beating Sergio Garcia. He was at the second last hole. He'd never played better golf in his life. He was feeling on top of his game. And he said, I don't know what happened. While I was teeing off in the 17th hole, something happened, and he hit the ball into the river, into the Barry Burn, okay? That's him looking in there for the ball, couldn't find it, had to take a penalty shot. So he walked up to take a penalty shot. He said he was okay. He said, that was silly. Took a second penalty shot, back into the Barry Burn, twice, in front of millions of people on television. Utter humiliation, utter disappointment. This big reward he'd been anticipating winning collapsed. Embarrassment, sense of being a failure. And what's more, when he was walking up to take the second penalty shot, he passed Sergio Garcia on the little bridge. Sergio Garcia gives him a big grin. So he thinks he's going to win. So, this is them walking up to take the second penalty shot. Look at the tense expression in both of their faces. And look at this fist here. Because Harrington said, Ronan Flood, his caddy, who was also his brother-in-law, was saying one thing over and over again. And it was so irritating, Harrington, that Harrington said afterwards, if I'd been holding my golf club, I would have hit him with it, okay? So that's him holding the golf club and wishing he's going to hit him, because what's he saying? He's saying, you are the best chipper and putter in the world. You are the best chipper and putter in the world. You are, and so on, almost hypnotically. So Harrington, when he came to take the second penalty shot, chipped it beautifully onto the green, holed it beautifully, went to the 18th, chipped it, played perfectly and squared the match with Garcia. They had a playoff, and he won the tournament. Huge celebrations, amazing television coverage. The two men didn't see each other for several hours because of the television and everything. So they came back into the limo to go back to the hotel at the end. And Harrington sank into the car, and he turned to Flood and he said, "Ronan, you saved my bacon out there," he said. "Do you know, after I hit that second penalty shot, I didn't think I had a chance." And he saw that Flood was laughing. He said, "Why are you laughing?" He said, "I didn't think you had a chance either." So what does that tell you? It tells you that Flood very, very cleverly just said the words. He hacked into your man's brain and took control of his attention. So no longer was this attention going to big thoughts of big success and glory, and therefore of big failure and humiliation. He controlled his attention to little thoughts about the next chip. He was like he was in a tunnel of attention. And of course, when you're in such a tunnel, what he's thinking about attention, he's thinking about the chip. He's not thinking about anything else. And of course, then his memories, his memory system are throwing up out of past successes, because he is one of the best chippers in the world. So he's in this kind of capsule where he's undistracted by big thoughts that increase his noradrenaline levels and disturb his brain and cloud his thinking and reduce his performance. He's in this sweet spot caused by the fact that his very clever caddy hacked into his brain, used the words to control his attention. And we can all do that. We can get through tough times by focusing not on the big outcome, either bad or good, but just on the next thing we're going to do. And we know that just focusing your attention on the task in hand, even if that's cleaning a sink, people who focus, whose mind is on what they're doing, are protected against the mind wandering, because when you're a wandering mind tends to be an unhappy mind. So I see a lot of people nodding. You know the power of action, the power of just getting down to something to help can put your attention on what you're doing, so your attention is not going to worries. So that's it feels fake sometimes to say you can do it, you can get through this, to talk to yourself like you're Ronan Flood to Patrick Harrington. But actually, talking to yourself in that way, inspiring yourself in that way, has very positive effects, because it helps control your attention and therefore control your emotions and therefore control how well you do stuff. So that's the virtuous cycle. Words, channel your attention, help you create a goal for yourself. Even if that goal is getting that sink cleaned, that gives you a little success experience, a little bit of dopamine in your brain, lifts your mood a tiny bit. I've done that. And that then builds your confidence more. And that works like compound interest. If you keep doing it, it builds up and up. So, and then another protector of confidence is your values. So just think about what you stand for. You know, who you are. Who are you? What are your values? My values are commitment to my family. My values are honesty. My values are hard work. My values are being creative. There are 50 or 60 different values I could give you. And they're the bedrock for our self-esteem, okay, for who we are. But sometimes we can forget about them. But the evidence is that if we are feeling lacking in confidence, or if we're feeling our confidence is sapped by, say, stress or negative threats to our self-esteem, someone criticizing us, for example, someone humiliating us, our brain can tolerate that better and therefore have better brain health if we take a few moments to affirm our values. This is called self-affirmation. And the exercise is quite simple. The exercise is quite simple. You say, well, what are my values? Maybe 3 or 4 or 5 values that are critical to who I am. And you just write down, well, what are they? Why I hold them, and what they mean to me, and how they work out in my life. Just a little kind of mini essay. What are my values? And when you do that, the evidence is that if you get criticized or feel threatened, your ego feels threatened by someone, it's usually a person rather than a situation, your brain reacts much less, with much less anxiety to that. You're better able, makes you more resilient, affirming your values. And that's because values are eternal in a way that we are not, okay? So values are a bedrock. And if we remind ourselves of our values, it makes our ego feel more secure and less threatened. So, and that's, of course, Albert Einstein's great thing. It's not about success. Strive to be a success, but there are to be a value. To the extent that you do that, you will be happier, more resilient, and have better brain health. And then, this is Mark Twain, you know, to the extent we do affirm our values and cleave to them, we give ourselves our own approval, and that's a huge source of confidence. A lot of people undermine themselves, okay? So that's just in the parts of the brain that change when you affirm your values. I won't bother with the details of that. And just finally, the strength of a social network, and I kind of sense this community is a very densely connected community. So there was a study done in Chicago where they measured a group of people of our age, measured their cognitive function yearly until we died, okay? And then we took our brains and did postmortems in our brains afterwards. And they looked at how much pathology was in our brains, how many plaques and tangles and how much shrinkage there was. And they looked back at how that related to cognitive function when they were alive, the test performance. And they found, yeah, okay, that's, there was a good relationship, thank goodness, because what's all the point of this cognitive testing if there wasn't? Yeah, the people who had more pathology in their brains had poorer cognitive performance when they were alive. Except for one group. And that was a group of people who had very dense social connections, dense social networks. In that group, there was virtually no relationship between how much pathology they found in their brains after they died and what their cognitive function was when they were alive. Okay? So the connected brains of a social network allowed them to function cognitively at a level that overruled the effects of the, if you like, the medical, biological factors in their brains. So that's confidence. That's the Wall Street Bull. Confidence is particularly something that women and young women, girls, need to develop, because boys, for cultural mainly and other reasons, tend to benefit, have a privilege because they tend to be more overconfident than the girls, and it gives them a huge advantage. But anyway, that's me finished. Glad to take some questions.
Thank you very much. Who would like to ask a question? We'll just use the mic for the video purposes.
Sorry, just I took the opportunity of the question. Nobody else was asking first. But anyway, I was fascinated by the dopamine, and we hear about the dopamine hit. And you made a very good case as to why this is beneficial and why confidence and positive emotions develop that. I was wondering whether you could look at it the other side, and whether there are people, white males, who are socialized into a sense of overconfidence, might actually be dependent upon dopamine hits. If you look at, for example, Trump, I mean, I get the impression that all the time he is seeking approval.
Yeah.
And he's seeking this. So, for example, when a tame journalist asks him a question, asking him about how wonderful he is morally and ethically and what a decent man he is, he said, "I really like that question."
Yeah, I know. So yeah.
Do we need dopamine?
Well, we do. We all need to feel in control. So for instance, that relationship between dopamine and perceived social status no matter what your social status is, if you feel you have control, the more you feel you have control, the more you're protected against the negative effects of low social status. So feeling in control is a critical need. Basically, all of us need three things to different degrees. We need to feel in control, to have autonomy, but that's also can extend into having power. So that can power and control are part of the same thing. Second thing is we need to feel have a sense of achievement. Okay, and you see that in kids learning how much it's a natural tendency we would want to achieve. That's different from control or power. And the third one is we want to be accepted by other people. So it's affiliation, achievement, and control/power. And people have these, we all have these motivations to different degrees. Some of you will be much more concerned with being liked and accepted by other people than with having control. Other people will be more motivated to have control and maybe a bit of power. And leaders need to have an appetite for power. They need to. However, because we all engineer the dopamine in our own brains in a healthy, natural way by achieving in life, achieving successes, by taking control, by connecting with other people, by doing things for other people. These are all healthy, by our GA team winning, all of these things increase dopamine. These are healthy ways, but there are unhealthy ways of stimulating the dopamine system, including cocaine, and including great materialism. So people whose values are largely materialistic, whose motivation for money is greater than their other motivations. A, they tend to be less happy, but B, when they get money, it's more, and this is true of power also, it activates their dopamine system more in the way that cocaine does. And when you get big, strong, hedonistic activations of the dopamine system, it becomes addictive. So that's why so pathetically Trump constantly needs approval. His ego is so huge, it's a narcissistic ego, that it needs to be fed with this, and it is like a poor drug addict on the river there, needing the repeated drug doses to keep the same sense. And the more his ego goes, the more he needs the adulation, which is why it's such a dangerous cycle. And of course, that too much dopamine, too much power causes really bad effects on the brain in the sense that judgment, risk perception, empathy all go. And that's why Napoleon invaded Russia. That's why Hitler invaded Russia against the advice of his generals. And that's why Trump will surely overreach and do things that will come back and bite him, and maybe bite us as well. Who knows?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Betty. All of the speakers we've had here, there's a common thread runs through everything. Whether it was Roseanne Kenny or it was Patrick Gagan or whoever it was, the common thread is that social connections, your confidence in being able to connect.
Yeah.
It can be, some people can't move forward, but to be able to have the confidence to say, well, hello, how are you?
Exactly.
To a stranger.
Exactly.
It strikes me that all through life, in every aspect of life, those values are the important things.
Very well put.
A person. Now, there will be times when you will have the anxieties,
Yeah.
and you will have the look for approval, and all of those things. But in the main, if you can keep those things on top,
Yeah.
you're a winner.
That's why we need leaders like you, Betty. Yeah.
Thank you. As Betty's always saying, we are can-do people.
Yeah.
One thing I'd be really interested in, I just found it fascinating that so much of it to me was what we've always been telling ourselves, I can, I know I can. and people talking you up, good people
Yeah.
that you know, she's one of them, who would always talk people up, and of course you're able, do you know what I mean? But I'm from the north inner city, and what I've noticed in the last while, well, it's been there for years, there was always very low educational achievement, and it has definitely come back up. But I see an awful lot of young people now who, they literally don't talk to each other. There's no socialisation at all. And maybe I think this stuff should be getting taught in school, not in colleges. Maybe we should be getting taught this stuff when we're younger so that they can believe in themselves. They kind of see themselves as, oh, that's just the way things are. Nobody does anything out here. So the people who do succeed are the exception, not the rule in areas like where I come from. I'd just like to know.
No, that's a very well put, and there is a real problem, particularly since COVID, and that kind of individualism, great individualism, that's very much part of American culture that we've adopted here. That's related to technologies and everything. That's a huge threat. It's the antithesis of what Ireland is famous for, and the GAA would be the example of the very opposite of that, and communities like yours, very opposite of that. So we have to. That's the most critically important, valuable resource, as important as any medical services, is to find a way to maintain that networking of human beings and that conversing and talking of human beings that here people are so good at.
Actually getting out and knocking on someone's door.
Exactly.
Would you like to play the game?
Exactly. No, exactly. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. People stuck in their computers, stuck in their bedrooms. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm in my 70s and I recently got a very small tattoo.
Good man, good. I was thinking of one myself. Yeah.
But I always told my children not to.
Yeah.
I was so happy when it was finished. I had to stop myself from, being.
It's brilliant.
It's just the greatest feeling.
Yeah.
So I know exactly what you're talking.
Oh, that is great. You know what? I was away with my wife somewhere. Can't remember where. And I said, and I'm similar. I said, "Will we get a tattoo?" But you did it. We didn't do it. You did it. Well, good on you. Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it's just when you mentioned about boys growing up with confidence and girls, kind of you have to really be behind them. Like I had 3 girls, and thank God they are very confident women. But I find with the next generation, like my granddaughter now, I find like you really, really have to get in behind them and say, you are as good as any boy, and you don't give up your sport. And we have to really, really get in behind young girls now, not to give up their sport, to engage, and to know that they're as good as any boy on the planet.
100%, because the social media is undermining that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I couldn't agree more with you. There was a chap up there.
Hi. Hi. Thanks. Thank you for the presentation. Very enjoyable. Just something very basic. It's not a question. It's a feeling I have, an appreciation I have, and it's going to sound very, perhaps trivial to a lot of people, but it's actually really great to be alive.
Yes.
And I'm not just saying that.
No.
As an older person, it's something I've tried to feel all my life.
Yeah.
It starts with that.
Yeah.
You know, when you open your eyes in the morning, and to realize that you are actually alive.
Yeah.
Full stop. Before anything else happens.
You know, that's such a profound observation, because there is a big problem of some people lose a sense of purpose or meaning, and that can happen when you get older if you're not in a job or your kids have grown up. So, and actually predicts if you don't have a sense of purpose, it's as bad for you as smoking. Okay, and people with a sense of purpose develop Alzheimer's 4 years later than people, which is huge, than people with no sense of purpose.
Well, a great quote came across some time ago, and I say this you know, with a pinch of salt, because it doesn't just apply to the group I'm thinking of, or who are here today for the most part. But old age is a privilege denied to many.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So if we consider that in itself,
yeah,
we really are lucky.
yeah.
But I'm not just limiting things to age. To have an appreciation of life
Yeah.
can be there at any age.
Ab-
It's great for the brain.
And if you can, yeah, I totally agree with you. And if you can get into that frame of mind, because consciousness is the great mystery of the universe. Physicists scratch their heads. They're trying to get a unified theory of the universe, but consciousness is a pain for them because it doesn't fit in there. So to be part of that human collective consciousness is a bit of a wonder. And if you can engage in that feeling of awe and gratitude, if you like, to be your meaning, if you can get into that frame of mind, there's no problem with purpose in life or meaning, because just being a grateful participant in this state of being aware and alive has its own meaning. Yeah, no, thank you. Great point.
I'm curious, I do a class in mindfulness on a Friday. I was wondering, what effect would that have on aging?
Oh, huge. Mindfulness has mindfulness has profound effects on the brain, on the immune system, and probably on cognitive aging as well. So good on you for doing that. And it's that comment about, just being amazed at being alive, having his own meeting. What mindfulness can do is to put you into that state where you're just appreciating awareness. And so the effects are quite remarkable. It's something that people should try, and practice.
I don't know if this is a comment or a question. Many of us are obviously conscious of getting older.
Yeah.
But age is not really what concerns most older people. What concerns them is staying compos mentis.
Yes.
And the extent to which there is obviously testing to see whether or not there's a cause as to why your memory is slipping. And there are some medications that appear to make quite a considerable difference in certain cases.
Yeah.
How does one know when to decide your memory is slipping more than it ought?
Well, the good news is that there are now treatments. Because it used to be you'd go and you get diagnosed, and you get the diagnosis, and there's not much on offer. And also, your memory can decline for reasons that are remediable. It can be, for reasons of various medical conditions or drug interactions or other factors that are remediable. So that's why it's important, if you feel your memory is getting worse, then it's worth asking to go for a checkup to the memory clinics, somewhere in James's or somewhere else, and to get some advice. And the good news is, a lot, if you're classified as something called mild cognitive impairment, MCI, significant proportion of people who are diagnosed with MCI don't get worse. So, that's why it's worth getting an opinion if you feel that's the case. Yeah.
I just wanted to come back to the point about a purpose in your life.
Yeah.
And for me, personally, when I retired, I lost a huge purpose in my life.
Yeah.
But fortunately, because of my job, being a community activist, I had so many other fingers in different pies. But I think if I hadn't had that and retiring from work, and I retired when I was in my 70s, I think that's a huge thing. And it affects so many, particularly men.
Oh, yeah.
when they retire. So the purpose in your life, whatever it is,
Yeah.
that's what's very, very important.
It's the biggest challenge, and that's why before you retire, you should try and make plans for and retirement's a terrible word. It's an awful word. You know what, in America, I spent some time in America. In America, they don't have the pension systems that Europe has. And that means there isn't the ceiling. The people don't think, because I'm 70. People start businesses in their 70s. They don't, and throughout Europe, some places in Europe, like France, and you can retire in your 50s, and that's a disaster. If you hate your job, fine. If you hate your job, get out of it, but don't think of yourself as retired. The trouble is in France and Italy and places like that, the railway workers retire at 55, and you see them all gathered around playing bowls or just hanging about. There's a significant relationship between the mean age of retirement in a country and their mean memory function. Okay? And in France, they've looked at self-employed people who have very generous pension agreements in France, but the ones who choose to retire at 60 get more Alzheimer's disease earlier than those who go until 65. Now, that's not inevitable because, as you said, some people stop doing a job they don't like and do things, but these things have to give them purpose. You need a bit of work in your life, even if that work is, I've got to go up and do the weeding in the garden, or I've got to go and help Joan. Work is a small W, but it's something that's not leisure. If life is all leisure, then leisure only exists in contrast to work. So it's to do with obligation and duty and feeling needed, and that gives you purpose.
Time for one last.
My question is, you spoke about America.
Yeah.
I go quite a bit. So
Yeah.
last time in November we were there, and if you get a bus pass, you can go around for €20,
Yeah.
$20. But the lady doing our photographs was 73 years
Yeah.
of age with no pension,
Yeah.
and she's got to work till ever her eyes
Yeah.
close to die.
Yeah.
No standard
Yeah.
of living like we have in Ireland.
Which is terrible because,
My sister and I looked at one another and thought, oh my God,
Yeah.
how lucky are we?
I know.
I just thought I'd mention that poor lady.
Yeah.
Look, that was.
Thank you.